Hello, good evening, everyone from London, and good afternoon to Donna Michaels, my special guest today in our Special Spirits series. Just to remind, we are focusing on raising awareness of challenges, different abilities people face, especially those which we cannot really see, the invisible disabilities, challenges. It's important to talk about them, to understand them better. And it is, in my understanding, a little step, a little way of making society a bit more inclusive, maybe bringing a bit more patience into the society, dealing with variety of different challenges. So we are going to talk with Donna about PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. Donna I'm so honored to have her. She is an amazing lady who spent years serving in the US Navy. She's worked with the US Navy SEALs, so that is definitely impressive, and has just retired after 20 years of working for the law enforcement. So thank you for all you've been doing. Even though I'm not a US citizen, I can appreciate all your hard work, and a very challenging one. So today we will be talking about one of those invisible wounds which people in your line of work tend to suffer from, probably suffer in silence a lot, and maybe don't even recognize. And just to set the scene, I wanted to just mention a few things about this PTSD for people who maybe are not aware of that. So we will talk to Donna about her symptoms and how it worked with her. But just as a guidance, when we are talking about symptoms of PTSD, we are talking about reliving this traumatic event. So it is a set of reactions that can occur after someone has been through a traumatic event. And I would risk a statement, pretty much everyone will have a traumatic event in their lives, not necessarily as traumatic as people working on the front line, responding to disasters, etc. So also avoiding reminders of traumatic events, because of self-isolation might be another symptom, negative thoughts or feelings of troubles with sleeping or concentrating, and other mental health challenges, illnesses, just to name two, depression and anxiety. So it is quite complex. But I'm talking to someone who actually wrote a book as well. Donna is an author of a New York best-selling book, I believe.
No, my foreword was written by a New York Times best-selling author, Don Mann. He wrote my foreword. But I have made a best-selling list on Amazon for military biographies.
Here we go. I was close, and the book is called Courageously Broken. I love the title. Absolutely love the title. And as I'm saying, I'm so honored to have you here. So I would like you to tell us more about what happened to you, how because if I remember correctly, your sort of episode happened in 2017, which is only 3 years ago. So how did it manifest to you that you got that PTSD, and how you managed to recover from that? That's a fascinating story. So I'm waiting for you to tell us all about it.
Okay. Well, in a simple way, I can just tell you that life happened. I like a lot of people, I came from I wouldn't say troubled childhood, but just a challenging childhood. And as a result of wanting to gain my independence and be on my own and get away from my family life, I joined the military, like so many do, I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to, be on my own. So I joined the military, where I went through my first traumatic event right out of boot camp. And I describe, of course, all of that in the book. And back in the late 1980s, a lot of things went unreported. You just didn't talk about them because you were afraid of retaliation. You were afraid of hurting your career. So you just kind of sucked it up and just kept silent about it. And so that was the first thing. And the way I dealt with it was I kind of convinced myself that it just never happened. It was just a bad dream. And, it was my imagination. And I never properly dealt with it. And then fast forward to 2000, I had gotten out of the Navy. Well, back up a little bit. After that, I did end up at a Navy SEAL unit, not as an operator. I wasn't a SEAL, obviously, but I was fortunate enough to get assigned to a SEAL unit as a support person. And I was the person who would negotiate with the embassies and the consulates and get them, visas and passports, like in a moment's notice, to get them, on emergency operations and things. So it was very, very fast paced, a lot of responsibility I think back now and I think, oh my God, I was only, 20, 21 years old. And I think about the level of responsibility I had at such a young age. At the time it was just my job, but looking back now, I realized I really did have a lot of responsibility, but that was okay, because it's that special operations world. They will hand you as much as you can handle. And as long as you're handling it, they'll continue to handle you more, and they'll always be pushing you to your limit, which, in hindsight was very good for me at a young age, right? Always reaching to be a little bit better and a little bit sharper. So the 90s came along, the defense budget cutbacks happened. I ended up out of the Navy like so many did. And I kind of floundered for a while. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And then around 99, I met somebody in law enforcement who convinced me I would make a good law enforcement officer. And I thought the idea was absolutely insane at first. I'm like, no, I would not. I was used to being the getaway driver when I was in the Navy whenever there was a bar fight. And now they want me to be the one, chasing. So I thought it sounded crazy, but, they all just laughed and said, look, everybody when they're young does crazy, dumb things. As long as it wasn't horribly criminal, you'll be fine, And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So I did a ride along and I fell in love with the adrenaline rush. I was a big adrenaline junkie. And that was it. I was hooked, and here we are 20 years later, and I just retired. But what I didn't know I was getting into, and what a lot of people don't realize, including most first responders, is, when we sign up for the job, we know we're going to see horrible things. We know we're going to see people on their worst day, and we sign up for that. We get it. But we don't really realize how it will affect us. Personally, we think that's our job. That's what we signed up for, and we keep going. And unfortunately, what I've learned talking to old timers, as they say, people that did it generations before me, they had a camaraderie back then where they would get together at the end of a shift and they would go to the local bar and they would have a drink. And I'm not condoning alcohol, of course, but looking at it now, I realize they were all self-medicating, right? But they were just doing it together. So it was just going out with the boys, or, and that was just the culture, right? Mm-hmm. And now here we are generations later where, you drink and you get in trouble, whether it's a bar fight or a DUI or whatever. If alcohol's involved, I mean, that's the end of your career. So self-medicating, be it legal or not, is obviously frowned upon. So, yes. And we don't have that camaraderie we used to. We don't go out to dinner. We don't break bread together. We go to work, we do our job, we go home to our families. That's it. And we certainly don't tell our families about our day because we don't want to burden them with the horrific things that we experience. So we end up kind of locking them away in our brain, and we don't properly process them. And then eventually, after enough years of this and enough bad, horrible calls, it catches up. And then in my case, in 2017, it was one too many. It was a child death. It was probably my seventh one I had witnessed on the job. And child deaths, I don't care who you are, they're never easy for anybody. Our brains just are not programmed to witness things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So it was one too many for me. And I went into a really, really bad place in my head. And it was like it opened up the box that I had stuffed all the other traumas in, and they all exploded. And I was having nightmares, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't stop thinking about them all. And all the faces of all the victims had come back to me. And I was constantly crying, and I was hiding from people at work because I didn't want them to see. I'm normally a very gregarious, outgoing person. And all of a sudden I was withdrawn. I was quiet. I wasn't being a good mom. You know, I'm a single mom, and I was not able to interact with my child without crying. So I was even, you know, avoiding my own child, which was awful. And then of course the demons in your head tell you, oh, you're failing as a mother. You're a failure, you know. And I grew up old school, you know, toughen up, buttercup, you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, you know, get back to it. But for the first time in my life, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't find the strength to pull myself out of that hole. And I got into a really, really bad place mentally. And I decided I would be better off dead. And I put my daughter on a plane. I sent her out of state because I didn't want her around when I did it. And I called my best friend, and I wasn't expecting him to pick up the phone. I was planning to leave a voicemail. And surprisingly, he did pick up the phone that day. And thank God he did, because he knew immediately where my mind was and what I was thinking about doing. And he spent 8 hours on the phone convincing me that it was okay to go get help, that I wasn't crazy, and that a lot of people, you know, special forces and cops and firefighters, you know, far tougher than me, had gotten help. And I trusted him, you know. And this was that one person. We all have that one person we really trust. He was my person. And he told me how I could get some help without my employer knowing about it. So I went on the down low and I did it, because I was afraid of, if I told him what I was going through, that I would lose my job and, you know, be embarrassed and ashamed and all that stuff. And so I ended up at the VA, and for the first time talked about what had happened in 1989 that I never discussed. And that got me treatment in the VA. And then we worked our way forward with all the other traumas. And here I am. Well, then I started a journal. So my book was a book by accident. It started out a personal journal of me trying to retrieve memories I had suppressed. And I shared it with my best friend, and he convinced me that I should go public with it, that I could probably help other people. So that's my new mission. My new mission is to erase the stigma, to let others know that it's okay to have these feelings, you know, and that we need to properly process them. And we need, you know, sometimes we need help working through them, because we have a lot of questions in our mind that we don't understand. And sometimes it does take a professional to help us figure out, you know, because you think about it, we suppressed it for so long. It's like a puzzle, and we need to help putting that puzzle back together again. And then once we put the puzzle back together again, it's like a scar. The seams are still there. The scars are still there. But we become whole again, and we learn how to manage it, is what I tell people. In my mind, PTSD cannot be cured, and it doesn't go away, but you can learn how to manage it. And when you get to that point, you feel much better than you did when it was all just running around in your head, unmanaged. So.
Wow, what a story, Donna. I mean, you were so close of losing your life, basically, because it was just bottled up for so long. I really felt how, when you were talking about it, felt the pain you were going through of being alone with it. I think that's what sort of came to me as a vision of being very lonely and very unsupported.
I wouldn't wish that pain on anybody. And it's funny because I would always hear other people talk about, oh, they have anxiety, or they have stress, they have, you know, depression. And I didn't comprehend it. I was one of those people that said, oh, come on, you know, just put your big girl panties on, you know, just push forward, you know, just, you know, step up. I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. I had never been through depression or any of that before until it caught up to me. So I truly feel bad for having used to felt that way. And I'm much more empathetic now to people who, you know, are where I once was.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are on a mission. You are raising awareness. So
Trying.
Of course you are. And I really love the fact that you drew from that journal of your recovery journey. You've managed to create a book, and it is published now, and helps others who are, I guess, going through a similar things. Maybe they can't even express it because they're articulating certain emotions can be difficult for people who are not used to talking about emotions, especially when it's so difficult. And that's, I guess, law enforcement, army people, they would have additional level of stress. And I mentioned to you, and just before we came on live, I spoke to a special forces person, and he was talking a lot about the preparation, the alertness, the state of alertness they have to be all the time, and that sort of go 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 mentality, which doesn't leave much space for relaxation. Yeah, sort of.
Thought
Yeah,
processing.
thought
Yeah.
processing. Exactly.
You're
Thank
always
you.
pushing forward and you don't have time to process the
Mhm.
present, or, and then the present
Yes.
becomes the past. So yeah, there's a lot of guys I know that are now, retired, and their bodies have truly been through hell, from jumping out of airplanes and just getting shot and battle and blown up and all kinds of stuff. And now that their bodies can no longer keep up with, that kind of mission, now they have nothing
Yeah.
but time to think. And it really, really, after retirement, and this goes for law enforcement, first responders too, it's
Mhm.
once you stop, go, 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 that it all kind of mentally catches up. And you've got to have a plan. You've really got to have a plan to work through it. And it doesn't always take, for some people it does take medication. For other people, it's just having somebody to pick up the phone, a battle buddy to call and talk
Mhm.
to, somebody that understands and has been there.
Yes.
Everybody's different.
Yes. And apart from journaling, which was such a useful technique for you to get well and get healthy, have you had any other practices or techniques which helped you to
My
get well?
dog, my dog,
Yes.
who was I got when I was, let's see, July was when things were the worst, and it was Labor Day weekend. About 2 months later, that one of my veteran brothers called me and said he had a pup for me that I needed to come get, and I thought he was insane. I'm like, I ain't got time for a puppy right now. Are you crazy? He goes, trust me, this is exactly what you need, and he was right. I needed something to
Mhm.
focus on. I need something to distract me from the pit that I was in, right?
Mhm.
And boy, did it work, because he was a 70-pound 7-month-old German Shepherd, and full of energy and mischievousness and constant trouble, and it drove me crazy, but he made me laugh all at the same time. And that was truly fantastic medicine, and I came to
Mhm.
the conclusion through all this, dogs really are man's best friend. They've done scientific studies about when we interact with them, the dopamine and the serotonin that is released in our brains just from petting them.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, getting involved in with him and going to professional dog training, and just it became a hobby for a while,
Mhm.
and it was fantastic medicine for me.
Yes.
And now he's my service dog. He's been certified because I still have triggers, and I always will. And now I've learned what my triggers are. Sometimes I can avoid them, sometimes I can't. But if I'm in a situation that I know is a trigger, for example, I don't do well in crowds. I
Mhm.
take him along and I joke and I say, we were social distancing long before it was a COVID thing, because I don't like people to get too close to me.
Yeah.
So when you're walking with a now 90-pound German Shepherd, people
I
tend to
guess
keep their
yes.
distance,
Keeping your
right?
respectful
So
distance. Yes.
yeah, so he keeps me, he definitely keeps people at a distance, which helps me
Yes.
if I'm standing in a line in a store to pay for something. He will turn around and face the opposite direction, and we call it having our six. He'll watch my
Mhm.
back so no one can sneak up on me. Believe it or not, he was never trained to do that. He does that automatically.
Mhm.
A real service dog, they just know what to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a trainer last night, and she's like, a good service dog knows what to do. It's the humans we have to train because they need to know how to recognize what their dog's doing for them. And that's exactly what
Amazing.
happened with he and I. He just
Mhm.
automatically knows what to do when I'm in trouble. I fell in Dallas 2 weeks ago in the middle of the street. I tripped on a brick, and he automatically, like I was in the middle of an intersection, and
That's
he
an
automatic.
unusual way of tripping, to be honest. But
Well, believe it or not, it was exactly the same spot where John F. Kennedy was shot and killed. We were on our way to see the memorial, and I was crossing the very intersection where he was shot and killed. And they've kept it historic. And so it's brick road, the big red bricks.
Mhm.
One of them
Yes,
was slightly elevated, and I tripped
as
on
they are.
it. And I mean, I face planted right in the middle of the road. And he immediately came over, stood over me, while I got myself together, because like knocked the air out of me. It was a pretty hard fall. And he
Mhm.
stood over me, and he, guarded me until I was able to get up, and he did, like I said,
Mhm.
they just know what to do. My daughter did have to call 911 one night. For me, I was having some really bad abdominal pain. It was right after a
Mhm.
surgery, so we weren't sure. And I was a little nervous, like how he was going to react when the firemen and the EMS people came in. And he was obviously concerned about me because I was in a lot of pain, but he allowed them to get to me and treat me as needed. So it's amazing how smart they are. They know the difference between when someone's trying to help you and when someone's trying to hurt you.
Yes, I think I've heard it from someone who had a German Shepherd, as you do, trained for the police, and he was talking to me about the fact that they recognize emotions, their
Mhm.
intentions, which
Mhm.
is unbelievably helpful, of course.
Oh, very.
So,
Yeah.
so
It's
that's
definitely, I trust him. He's a big goofball when we're at home. You would never
Mhm.
know he was a service dog because he's relaxed. But the minute that vest goes on and he goes into working mode, it's like a completely different dog. It's mind blowing how his personality instantly changes because he goes into that focused, okay, I'm working. It's pretty neat.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
obviously, people around you will recognize that it's a service dog because it looks like a service dog.
Right.
So that's
Yep.
that's a nice way. That's a beautiful way of recovering with such a best friend. That's amazing.
Yes.
Would you say
Yes.
that was the main trigger for you to get better, just to have that creature?
I think it was a pivotal turning point for me. I think it
Mhm.
was definitely a pivotal turning point. I mean, the only thing that helped me stop crying all the time, and brought me out of the suicidal state that I was in, honestly, was medication. I won't lie about that. But I'm the type of
That's
person that
okay.
I hate medication. I don't like taking, I don't even take vitamins. I'm just really bad about it. I don't like I don't like pills. So, but but I was in such a horrible place that, I was willing to try anything to
Yeah.
feel better. So I would say that initially it was a medication that brought me out of that suicidal state of mind and helped me
Mhm.
stop crying constantly.
Mhm.
Um, but then, but I still wasn't happy. I was existing, if that makes a sense. I felt
Yes.
like I was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
existing. When he came along, Saint, my dog, he gave me purpose. And I know that sounds awful because I'm a mom and I have a daughter and she is incredible and she is amazing. And I want to give credit where credit is due.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
she was at an age where I was still very much responsible for her. And even though I knew that,
Yes.
and even though I knew she relied on me, the demons in my head were telling me that I was failing her and that somebody else could do a
Mhm.
better job. And that's pretty awful. But
Yeah.
he came along and he was just instantly so attached to me. And I think it was the chemicals in my brain that started to improve when I interacted with him because he would be so
Mhm.
goofy and he would make me laugh. And of course, then the happy chemicals in the brain started
Mhm.
flowing. And so I definitely think that he was a pivotal point in me going in the right
Mhm.
direction.
Beautiful. Wow, that's such an amazing story. And now you have two dogs. So the second three.
I have three. I have the little one, which is really
Oh
my
my God.
daughter's. The little one that is in my lap right now. She is actually my daughter's dog. She's the old lady in the house. She sleeps with my daughter, and the only time she's with me is when my daughter's not home. She's at school right now. Then I have the other one. I have a female German Shepherd. She's on my left, and my male is on my right. So
Oh,
when I was working, I couldn't take him to work with me, and my daughter wanted a there's me and my daughter, and then the three of them. You could call it a full house if you're a card player, but
yes. Wow. Well, I'm so pleased for you. I mean, it's difficult to spot probably symptoms of PTSD unless you live with someone.
oh,
But
sure.
obviously, looking at you, you are so far from a picture of someone suffering from that illness. But if you were to advise anyone how to spot the symptoms, is there a way, or
Oh,
is
sure. Yeah, because in hindsight, I realized the symptoms were there long before I got as bad as I did. Um, that was
yeah,
just a
that's what
breaking
I'm
point.
wondering. Yes.
Yeah, no, that was just my breaking point. Up until that
Mhm.
point, I I look back and I realize now there were symptoms there and I just didn't recognize them. Easily aggravated, easily angered, pretty hot headed for me, and I know that's pretty common. Having very little patience with people,
Mhm.
and of course, a big one is hypervigilance. That is a really,
Yeah.
really big one. And that's that always on alert, always, and unfortunately, as cops and even firefighters, we don't get 911 doesn't get called, because somebody's having a birthday or wants to celebrate something. We're getting called to somebody's worst day or to
Yes.
something that is just definitely a negative experience.
Mhm.
So we are always on alert for the worst thing to happen. And so after a while, it kind of just becomes your DNA, in my opinion. And then you don't know how to turn it off when you go home. So our poor kids and our sorry, they heard a noise. Nine, leave it.
Well, we
But
know when we know someone's there.
yeah, I heard it. It was a car door outside, probably a neighbor. Um, so the yeah, nobody breaks in my house. I'm definitely safe.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
tell.
yeah. um where was I? So
That
the
stage of
hypervigilance.
alertness, which
Yeah,
comes with the job.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So with my daughter, like, while everybody's sheltering their kids and wanting their kids to grow up happy, healthy kids, my daughter was 5 years old, and I remember putting her on my lap and having her watch Walmart surveillance videos of a kidnapper who kidnapped a little girl from the toy department in a Walmart. And I'm like, this is why you don't run away. This is why you stay next to mommy. This is what strangers do. And, we're teaching that stranger danger really young, because what do kids do when they get in department stores? They want to go run, hide in clothing racks. They want to, run off from mom. And I would go, instead of being the normal mom and just being like, no, 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 don't do that. Like, I would freak out. I would, be like, oh my God, somebody's going to take you. I was terrified of all of these horrible things that we witness, and to
Yeah.
everybody else, it's like, oh, that's not going to happen here. This is a safe neighborhood, or, oh, that doesn't
Mhm.
happen. That only happens in big cities. A lot of people go through life, blissfully oblivious, right?
Yeah.
And
Good expression. Yes. Yes. But
yeah,
on
but
the
when you
front
see it all the
lines, you
time,
are seeing it all the time. Yes.
yeah, but when you see it all the time, you realize it can happen anywhere, and it does happen anywhere. So you're
Mhm.
always hyper vigilant, and it'll wear you down. And then when your daughter or your spouse or a family member, in my mom's case, I would ride my mom's, she was elderly and she was a night owl, and she would go out at night, on her scooter, and I'd be like, mom, you can't defend yourself. What if you get robbed? What if somebody attacks you? You're an easy target. They don't attack people who can defend themselves. They attack people who can't defend themselves. And she would
Mm.
just get so mad at me, just, oh, I'm a grown woman, let me do what I want, and it would stress me out. So I'd be constantly checking on her, like, are you home? Are you home? Are you home? So yeah, it's
Well,
rough. I mean, you're
and that's
constantly
that's
thinking that way.
tiring. That's exhausting,
It
actually,
is
to have that
exhausting.
level of anxiety, which
Hmm.
I guess it's the line somehow blends where it's work, where it's just anxiety, which is unnecessary. Oh
But we
gosh,
don't think it's unnecessary. See, we think we're protecting
yes.
our loved ones. We think that we're the protector, that that's our job,
Mhm.
so that's where the you don't, after a while, you don't have the ability to turn that switch off when you go home. You take those lessons learned at work home with you.
Yes.
And while I wouldn't tell my daughter, who was young, all the details of the horrible things that happen to children who are kidnapped, right? I don't share that with her. I just say,
Mhm.
hey, there's people out there that steal children away from their mommies and daddies and they never see them again.
Yes.
And leave it at that, hoping it would be enough to teach her, not to wander
Mhm.
away or don't talk to strangers and things of that nature. And I would say I did a good job. I might have done too good of a job, because even now people are like, your daughter doesn't think like normal teenagers. She's like the
Mhm.
mom in the group lecturing now her friends not to talk to
Yeah.
strangers on the internet and not to do this and all the
Oh,
things that I've taught her. So it's like, well, I mean, at least I know she's making good decisions, but now I feel like, she should be able to have fun as a teenager too. So trying to teach them that balance of being cautious, but still be able to have fun.
mhm.
Right.
Yes. Yes, yeah, which again for any parent is a challenge. Not to mention someone who's seen things we should have never experienced seeing in our lives. So again, to you and everyone in a service, in a line of duty, this should be a great reminder what kind of things you need to do on daily basis, and we should be grateful for you as a sort of collective. So thank you. I want to bring a question. I've got a question here from Lana, who is asking
Okay.
if you feel that sometimes a time of the year can trigger PTSD more than other times during the year. Is it sort of seasonal?
Oh, for sure. I can't, I, from a first responder standpoint, we have certain streets we will avoid. We will have, like for me, I can think of one particular intersection that I avoid. I will go around the long way to avoid this particular intersection because there's an event that happened at that intersection that was very difficult for me.
Mhm.
When my daughter was young, and even today, whenever I'm around water and there's little ones, toddler age, I can't handle it. Because I feel responsible for every young child near that water, because I look around, I see parents chit-chatting and not paying attention. And people don't realize drownings happen very quickly and very quietly. They're not the big
Yes,
dramatic scene you
I've
think they
learned that.
are,
That
right?
freaked me out when I learned that statistic.
Yes.
Yes, I've got
Yep.
a small
So
child. Yes.
yeah, there are definitely triggers. Cigarette smoke, believe it or not, is a trigger for me. It
Oh.
was years that I would get instantly really nasty and really angry if I smelled cigarette smoke, because I didn't know it was a trigger. But then once I learned it was a trigger, um, I still get anxious when I smell it, but at least it's better because now I understand it and I can work my way through it. So that was
Mhm.
where it went from losing my temper if I smelled cigarette smoke to, okay, I know why I'm anxious. I smelled smoke. I can work my
Mhm.
way through it. I can remove myself from the situation so I don't smell it anymore. So, yeah,
Yeah.
learning what your triggers are is really, really important so that you can either A,
Is
avoid them, or B, manage them.
any a reason for that? For that example, why the cigarette smoke would trigger you, or is it just?
You broke up a little bit. Say that again.
I was saying, was there a reason for that cigarette smoke to trigger
Yeah,
you?
it was my military trauma.
Okay.
My attacker reeked of cigarettes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's reliving the traumatic experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, yes. I mean, our brain, our minds are so complex. It's just incredible how much is being processed. But talking of processing, what probably there will be information in your book, but would you have some ideas on, especially for people in the service, to relax, to sort of get some more distance from what they do, and get that mental health a break, so to speak, sort of.
Well, if they go to my website, which is courageously broken.com, which is it was down for a while, it's back up, but it's still getting
Mhm.
some facelifts, I like to call it. It's still getting some little, aesthetic improvements.
Very nice.
But there is a
Yeah.
page that's called the resource page. And there are several links there that I have vetted. So I know them to be very, very good resources for both first responders and veterans. And they are everything from retreats to just getting away with other veterans and first responders, led by veterans and first responders, people who've been there and they understand, and doing all kinds of amazing things like equine therapy. There's mountain climbing, there's camping trips. There's just so many resources out there that are all nonprofit. They don't cost a thing to the veterans and first responders. So I have several there now. I will be continuing to add as I vet more. So I strongly recommend these things. I've talked to people that came back from one recently in South Dakota, and he has severe PTSD, and he said it was life-changing. It was just incredible. So I would strongly recommend that they do their research. If they're not here in the U.S. and they're in the U.K. or overseas, I would imagine there's similar places, but they're so, under advertised. They don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. So it's important that we talk to each other. That's really been the biggest thing I've learned, is talking to each other and hearing about, well, this works, that doesn't work, and networking. Networking is huge, and when we talk to each other, we find things that others have tried and has been successful or not. But I am very hopeful and optimistic about the number, and then the increasing number of nonprofit organizations out there with a variety of ways for veterans and first responders to heal from PTSD and to learn how to manage it. And then there's also, for those that are truly, truly, truly in crisis, like I was in 2017, there's actually intake facilities where they can go on the down low, on their own, where their dignity and their confidentiality is of the utmost importance, instead of being hauled off to the local mental hospital, which in all honesty is all of ours worst fear. That's the last thing we want. But if I had known then what I know now, that there were places I could have gone to get help, and my confidentiality would have been protected and my dignity would have been of importance, I would have absolutely reached out for that had I known about it.
Yes. Well, prevention is so much better than addressing the actual illness. And it just makes me wonder that unfortunately there is still stigma about mental health. And I guess it is also about your ability to do the work, isn't it? So that becomes slightly more difficult, to call it diplomatically, for first responders, for police, army. That's unfortunately complicates things, but it's
getting better though.
Yes,
I would say it. I mean, here in the U.S., it's definitely getting better. I've had several people reach out to me that told me that their doctors have recommended my book to them, and that has been probably so humbling and so truly an honor, and it made sharing my story so worth it, because originally when I was scared when I released my story. Of course, it's very personal, and I was worried about what people would think, but I thought if it saves just one person, it was worth it. And now to find out that I've got not only doctors recommending it, but I've had loved ones of whose husbands or children suffer from PTSD, and they've come to me and said, now I understand, because my son or my husband or my wife, they won't talk about, what bothers them. And now I understand why. We don't share with our loved ones because we're trying to protect them. It's nothing personal. We don't want them to think about the same horrible things we think about, because we love them. So it's helped a lot. Like I said, it's been an incredible, humbling, and an honor to have gotten such positive feedback from how it's affected, so many people.
Yeah, well, and it was incredibly brave thing to do as well. So that Courageously Broken title is very prompt, very accurate. And I'm so glad that you are out there helping people, because I really think that inspiration comes from sharing stories, help comes from looking up to people who've been there, and when someone is in the hole, you are out of it, you can give them a hand and say, I've been there, I know exactly what you're going there in, what you're doing there in that hole, and I know how to help you to get
Pull
out
you
of
out.
that
Yep.
hole. And that's what it is, isn't it?
Yes.
So
100%.
amazing, inspiring. I'll have to just pass thanks from Lana again, who has been with us, and her son and her husband were in military.
Aw.
So she wants to extend her gratitude for what
And
you've
tell her,
done.
thank you, Lana. I appreciate that. I know as a spouse, it's very difficult. So thank you.
Yes, it's available in the comments. So I would love to put links to your website and your book, so people can connect with you and benefit from that amazing experience you've been through. You found yourself on the other side.
Yep. If you don't mind, I designed these hoodies and t-shirts to help spread awareness. They are for sale on my website. On the front, it says Courageously Broken, Erasing the Stigma. And on the
Beautiful.
back, it says, you're never as broken as you think you are. All heroes have a few scars and bad memories. Heroes don't fight alone. We battle together. And it's got the 3 awareness flags. So 10% of all of my proceeds go to a nonprofit in Texas, where a woman who's one of the top dog trainers in the world, 100% free of charge, veterans and first responders can go out there, and she will match the perfect dog for them, train them for their needs solely for PTSD. And she is one of only 30 in the world who actually trains dogs for early cancer detection. So she is an incredible dog trainer, and the only thing she does free that's nonprofit is the PTSD service dogs. She really believes in them. And so do I. So I donate a portion of all my proceeds to what she's doing for veterans and first responders. So, but my book is available on, Amazon, all of the online bookstores, but on my website, they can pick up hoodies, t-shirts, and challenge coins as well.
Yes, and that's what it is. The wound is just a proof that whatever we dealt with wasn't as strong as we are. I've heard it somewhere, and I love that quote. It's about overcoming, surviving, and being proud of it. And you are such a great inspiration. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It will be a pleasure to direct people to your channels. And I'm so honored that you came on our live, shared your story, and inspired some people. So thank you so much, Donna. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Monica. I appreciate it.
Bye for now.